What am I going to eat next? Have I eaten too much? Will this make me gain weight? Is this even a healthy choice? Ugh, I can't stop thinking about those Oreos that I bought. If I order that, is everyone else gonna judge me? How many calories are in this? How many carbs are in this? How much protein is in this? Hi guys. I hope you enjoyed my little skit. If you have said any of those things, either internally or out loud, this video is for you. Today we're going to talk about how to stop thinking about food so much and how to stop obsessing over food. It's normal to enjoy food. I love food. I went to school, I spent all my money to go to college to learn about food so I could talk about it all day long. I love food, but we shouldn't be thinking about it 24/7. It shouldn't feel obsessive or like you're fixated on it. So there are 3 reasons I want to go over about why you can't stop thinking about food, why you feel so obsessed with food all the time. And they really all boil down to one main reason, and that is restriction. That can be short-term restriction, like say you're doing a 30-day weight loss challenge, or that could be from just years and years and years of trying every single diet and having your weight go up and down and up and down. Both of those are very common reasons why we become so obsessed and fixated on food. But more specifically, here are some different types of restriction that might be causing you to have these thoughts or these feelings. The first one is that you're simply not eating enough. So heck yeah, that's restriction. Whether you're following a certain calorie goal or you're doing a no carb diet, or maybe you are over exercising, you're not getting enough to fuel your body after your workouts. All of those things can lead to these constant thoughts about when my next meal is gonna be, am I eating the right things? It totally makes sense that if we're not eating enough, we're gonna constantly think about food. You know, it's our body's way of saying, hey, you're not eating enough, go eat something so I can think about something else. And I wanna point out too that even if you technically are eating enough calories or you feel full, you might not be satisfied. So say for example, you are doing, I'm gonna use the keto diet as an example because the keto diet is everything right now. With that diet, you're not eating hardly any carbohydrates, even though you might feel full because, you know, the foods you're eating are filling you up. You may not feel satisfied because you're not eating carbs, which you crave and you enjoy and your body needs. And so that might lead to you constantly just thinking about food. So reason number 1 why you might be thinking about food all the time is that you're simply just not eating enough or not eating the right types of foods. The second reason why you might be obsessed with food is that you have food rules and you probably label foods as good and bad. And again, this is just another form of restriction because you're probably only eating foods that are good. So here's what can happen when we do have those food rules. It can lead to what's called the binge restrict cycle. And so what that is you start with your restriction, you know, let's use again the example of the keto diet. Say you're not eating carbs anymore. You restrict, you don't have your carbs, and then you start to think about carbs a lot. That's all you're really thinking about is bread and rice and pasta and donuts and candy. And you start to become obsessed with that food. And then eventually you cave in and you binge on those carb-rich foods, that bread, those donuts, that candy, that pasta, whatever it is you were feeling deprived of. And then you feel guilty for doing that. You feel like a failure. You're never gonna reach your health goals. Why did I just do that? I was doing so good. And then you go back to restricting again, and that cycle just repeats itself. And that is why I am so adamant about not having restriction. Any kind of restriction is likely gonna lead to that vicious cycle that we really wanna get out of. Our brains are wired to want what they can't have. If I were to say you could never have bread ever again for the rest of your life, what would you constantly be thinking about? Bread. That's why it's so important to make all foods kind of neutral in your head. And while they are all very different nutrition-wise, I mean, you can't really compare cake and broccoli in terms of their nutrition. They're very different. One is not better than the other. And by thinking that one of them is better than the other, that's gonna make you, feel super guilty when you do have that bad food. Your mindset around food really does matter. And if you're like, yeah, I know, broccoli cake, all is great, whatever. But deep down, you are still feeling guilty for eating cake, cookies, brownies, whatever forbidden foods you may have. You haven't quite healed that relationship yet, and that is something to work on. So we'll get to that as well in a minute when I give you some tips. But bottom line is that by giving food moral value and labeling it as good or bad or having just forbidden foods in general is likely going to cause you to think about food 24/7. And then my third reason why you're thinking about food all the time is that you're using it to cope. And usually you're coping with a certain emotion, or maybe there's a part of your life that isn't fulfilled for some reason. There are times when emotional eating can be okay, but when you're going to food over and over and over again to cope with a certain emotion, doesn't fix the problem. We have to really deal with our emotions. So it's good to think about, how fulfilled am I in my life right now? Is food just a thing I'm using to occupy my thoughts? Is there a part of my life I need to attend to, kind of deal with? Am I living in line with my values, my morals? If food is something you're using to deal with all of those, the emotion is probably still gonna be there, so you're gonna keep using food to deal with it, and you're likely probably training yourself to go to food whenever you do feel stressed or anxious or depressed or whatever feeling you're feeling. And so it kind of just becomes a vicious cycle. And so really finding a different way to deal with that emotion should help take food out of the equation. Okay, so now that I've gone through maybe some reasons why you are feeling that obsession, that fixation on food, let's go through how to stop, how to get out of that cycle, and how to really heal your relationship with food. So this first one is way easier to say than it is to actually execute, but it's time to stop dieting. It's time to stop the quick fixes, no more band-aids. It's time to really figure out how to eat in a way that you can eat for the rest of your life and still be a very healthful person. And I know I'm a little biased, but that really is where working with a dietitian can really help, and they can teach you how to really get through this process, because it's not gonna be easy. It's gonna take time. There's gonna be points where you maybe still go through that restrict binge cycle. You're gonna have those thoughts about good and bad foods probably still while you're working through all of this. But that is the end goal, to get to a place where you're no longer dieting. If you haven't heard of intuitive eating, I do have a podcast episode on that with my co-host Emily that I'll link below. And I'll also link below this book, as that can be a really good first place to start if you are wanting to stop the diet cycle forever and kind of learn what a healthy eating relationship looks like. Part of this, no more dieting thing is gonna include reintroducing those forbidden foods. And this is kind of the scariest part for some people. So let's say that one of your forbidden foods is chocolate chip cookies. Whenever you eat those, you just feel so guilty. So you haven't had those in a long time. And if you do have them, you feel like you would probably just eat, a whole dozen of them. Here's how you might start to reintroduce those. First of all, be very specific about, do you want it chewy? Do you want it crunchy? Is there a certain bakery you like that sells the cookies that you love? Do you like dark chocolate chips? Do you like milk chocolate chips? Do you like to have nuts in your cookie? Be very specific about what you're looking for, and then go get some of those. Maybe even if it's just one to start, so you do feel like you have more control. Figure out exactly what you want, go and get it, and now we're gonna practice incorporating that back into your life. Make a plan. This is all about you having control over food. You're in control, you're in the driver's seat. This forbidden food is not. Plan out a time when you wanna have this cookie. Say maybe it's after dinner on next Tuesday. Try to pick a time where you maybe don't feel overly hungry so that you don't feel a need to overeat. Say it is like a half hour after dinner. And now it's time to actually eat the cookie. Don't eat it while you're watching TV or scrolling through your phone or reading a book. Really do it in a way where you're paying full attention to all of your senses. How does it smell? How does it look? How does it taste? And give yourself permission to eat as much as you want. If you want the whole cookie, that's fine. If you feel satisfied after eating half of it, that's okay too. It's important to remember you can always have more if you want more. This isn't gonna be your last time eating this chocolate chip cookie. You can have another one if you want to. And if you just keep practicing this, where you slowly and intentionally incorporate those forbidden foods, they won't seem like they have such a higher power over those good foods, like maybe salad, for example. When you know in your head that you can have any food you want, whenever you want, those forbidden foods no longer seem like they are in charge of you. Just remember that you should not feel bad for eating a cookie and good for eating a salad. I feel amazing after I eat a cookie. They're so delicious, I feel satisfied, but it has taken time for me to get to this place. And as you start this process, you might still feel guilty sometimes, and that's okay as you're learning. But that is the goal, where cookie and a salad, same thing. Of course, we know that nutritionally they're different. We know that a cookie is more so nourishing our soul, and a salad is maybe nourishing us more with fiber and vitamins and minerals. Food does not have any power over you. All right, another thing that might help you kind of stop thinking about food all the time is to have a regular eating pattern. If you're pretty sporadic, just like never really know what you're gonna eat, when you're gonna eat it, that can make you just, again, feel like the food is in control. So I find that it really helps that I usually stick with my general 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I personally like to have some snacks. I usually have a morning snack and then an afternoon snack and then something sweet after dinner. There's some days where I don't feel as hungry, so maybe I don't have maybe like that morning snack, for example. But I know that I could if I wanted to. And it also can be helpful to include protein at each of these meals and these snacks to keep you full for longer, along with fiber, which is also very satiating, and some kind of healthy fat often helps as well. By kind of sticking with that magical equation of protein, fiber, and healthy fats, at least one of those at every meal, I'll usually feel pretty satisfied. And along with this, kind of just planning ahead. So for me personally, before I go to the store, I usually go on Saturdays, I plan out at least all my dinners for the week. Get on Pinterest, look at my favorite food bloggers on Instagram, and I just jot down like 5 or 6 dinners I might have that week. We usually go out to eat at least once or twice, so that is one meal I don't have to worry about cooking for myself. But I usually plan out all those dinners at least, make a grocery list of what I need to make all those dinners. Lunch is usually leftovers, and breakfast I typically have similar stuff that I always have on hand, like oatmeal or avocado toast or maybe like a protein shake after a workout, something like that. So breakfast and lunch I'm not usually too concerned about. If you do feel like you don't know what the heck to have for those meals either, do a little planning. Maybe you plan out all 3 meals per day to start. And it can also help to have some snacks planned ahead too. And again, kind of think back to that idea of incorporating protein, fiber, and healthy fats. So some of my go-tos might be like an apple and a string cheese, or a banana with some peanut butter, or a Greek yogurt with some granola and some berries. Those are just some of the snacks that I would have on a regular basis that usually keep me satisfied until my next meal. All right, my next tip to help you stop thinking about food all the time is to really work on limit your emotional eating. And this goes back to what I said earlier, where you need to really learn to feel your feelings. If the minute we start to feel stressed out, we reach for a certain food, that's the food being in control. Figure out what you're feeling stressed about. What do I need to do to work through this stress? How else can I really deal with this emotion? And this is where seeking out mental health therapy can really help. Working with a therapist can really help you to work on different coping mechanisms when you do start to feel certain emotions, so you don't turn to food anymore. A lot of my clients that I work with that do see a therapist find that journaling really helps. Writing down what you're feeling, how you plan to deal with it, what you're gonna do better next time. Just having those thoughts on paper instead of just, not feeling them, pushing them down, eating food to kind of cover it. It's just a much better approach. All right, my last tip for you guys is to stop correlating your food choices with your self-worth. For example, when you say, oh, I just had some cake, I'm so bad, that thought, that mindset is not serving you in any way, and in fact, it's probably really more negative than it might sound right at first. When we correlate our self-worth with our food choices, not only does it again put food in charge, but it makes those foods forbidden, aka it's a restriction when you don't have them, and that goes back to that restrict binge cycle we talked about at the beginning of the video. You can eat cake and still be a really good person. There is no one food that is gonna make you gain weight, you know, worsen your heart health, give you diabetes. It is so much more about the big picture rather than what specific foods you have day to day. And you are so much more than what you eat and what you look like. And again, this takes time, and it is a huge win when you do eat cake or the cookie or whatever other forbidden food you have. That's a huge first step. That is awesome. But if you're still deep down feeling like you're a bad person for eating that, or that you did the wrong thing, or you just feel super guilty, food still has the control. So again, while that is a huge win, it's a great first step. Remember that we're not done yet, we're still working, and our goal is to get to a place where you're in charge, food is no longer controlling you, there really are no more food rules. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it helped you at least learn maybe why you do feel so obsessed with food, why you can't stop thinking about it. And if you do have those feelings, I hope that you start to incorporate some of those tips that I provided. And if you really are struggling with any of these and you just can't seem to get out of this rut, again, working with a dietitian really is the way to go. This is the kind of stuff that I love working through with my clients. And I know there are many other dietitians that are doing the same type of work. We just really want to cancel diet culture, get it out of here. Let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions about this topic, or if you're someone who has gotten rid of those food rules. Let me know any tips that have helped you so others can see those as well. And I will see you guys next time.